Hi, you are watching or listening to the Shift Training Podcast,
where we talk about personal development, we talk about mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health, and just overall well-being.
And today we're going to be talking about how to not be a tyrant, something I've been notoriously labeled as such and am guilty of, as many of us are.
Ooh, Coach Law, tell me more about being a tyrant.
It's easy, just boss people around. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's it?
One of the things that actually came up in a recent discussion was very interesting. Somebody was explaining how in a book that they read, and I forgot the title of the book, I really should remember this, but essentially when we are running around with expectations where there has been no communication and no agreement, we're essentially running around with demands. And to be running around with these demands and expecting these things of people, again, expectation without agreement equals demand. So if you're running around with some sort of expectation where there was no agreement, that is a demand. And if you're running around with a bunch of demands, we would obviously call you a tyrant.
Tyrant, not a good leader.
Not a good leader. So I think let's unpack that just a little bit just to be more clear. In order to not run around with a bunch of demands, somebody might say something like, well, can I expect this, and that, or should I expect X, Y, Z, this? I don't know. I put it like this. What expectation of you would be reasonable without you knowing it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more often than not, I believe for me, expectation is what causes disappointments, frustrations, unnecessary arguments, because you are not communicating to your partner, to your family, or to your friends what's in your mind, while the other person is oblivious about it, you know? While agreements, as you mentioned, there is this involvement of the other person. And even if you guys disagree on something, you could still compromise because there's this communication. It's healthier that way. So if we can use an example of a friend, you've been helping your friends with assignments or any tasks for a past couple of days, and you have this expectation in your mind that, okay, when it's my turn, I know that this person is gonna do the same thing with me. But if that needs did not met,
no one talked about it, it was never brought up.
Yeah, never brought up, then you'll feel frustrated, as we said earlier, or disappointed. And the worst part about that is that relationship, you won't be in a good terms.
Well, it's because you'll probably be angry about it. So this is one of those times where it's like, in my head I go, here's the auto response. Well, I can't depend on anybody, so I just have zero expectations. No, I think that's the wrong way. And I'm going to be very careful because I myself have been guilty of doing that. And I'm going to tell you right now, no, that's incorrect. The idea of, well, I should have no expectations of other people. Yes and no. You should not expect anything other than what agreement occurs. So for example, you should not expect something without there being some form of agreement, where there's alignment or congruence or a decision made where both parties are invested of another person. So for example, I cannot expect you to go wash my car because I want you to wash my car. You would have to agree to wash my car. I can't make you wash my car. It would be unreasonable and literally some tyrant-like demand of me to expect you to do it. Even if I've washed your car for you, but we never agreed that you would wash mine too.
Yeah.
And that's a super important thing. This is where practicing boundaries and also effective communication play a role.
Yeah.
So for example, we talk about going from being a tyrant to a leader.
Yeah.
Leaders are really good at effective communication and working with people. So if you want to work on those expectations, basically expectations without agreement or demands. So we're going to stop calling them expectations. We're going to call them demands. If you want to get rid of your demands, build agreements with people and then actually have reasonable expectations, you might still be disappointed, you might still be let down. People may not honor their word, in which case you just be more mindful with your boundaries and how you navigate that. But nonetheless, then you will actually have reasonable expectations. You won't be a tyrant anymore.
Yeah.
But in order to do so, you have to be a good leader. You have to be good with effective communication, and you also need to be able to get people's buy-in. Why would I want to come into agreement with you about something unless I've got skin in the game or there's something I want?
Yeah, I think I think expectation is something that we all need to define, because expectations could be dangerous. This where the unnecessary arguments or blaming other people happens or occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's one thing that, what would you say is like the first step of taking an expectation, or AKA a demand, and bringing it to the table to work towards an agreement, so you guys can have a set of, you and another person can have a reasonable set of expectations?
I think for me, expectation, I learned this like past couple years, that I don't know where's the dichotomy when you said about like there's still certain expectation, but for me, like what I've learned is like I don't really expect anything. If I'm gonna genuinely do this for you, then I'm not really expecting anything. But if there's something that I will tell you that, okay, so if I do this, then I have a favor for you to ask as well. So that's more like how I see expectation and agreements.
Right. So what would be like the first step to initiating that with somebody?
I think first step would be obviously like self-awareness. You need to be aware about, what you want. I think just communicating it. The first step is just communication. As you mentioned, effectively communicating with that that group of people or person. I think that's the first step.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely the first step is going to be, stepping forward into communication. And the question is like, how do you go about doing that? And how, when's a good time, or trying to find right timing? Because timing always plays a role in that. Timing for how you approach it, timing and how you approach something make a big difference in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the dance. And I think you have to be aware in this moment, do I need to have this particular expectation and demand and execute or behave in this way where I'm willing to be a tyrant? In this moment, should I be a tyrant, or should I deploy a little bit of patience, awareness? Should I be trying to find the right timing to communicate or relay something I'd like to bring to the table or come into an agreement with?
Yeah.
And there are times where, you may not be able to reach some level of agreement with a person, and you guys set some reasonably balanced expectations, and you might not be able to do that, in which case, again, you'll have to assess how you want to navigate that.
Yeah.
But even being able to do that is a practice in healthy boundaries. It's where can we negotiate or be reasonable? Where can I have what I need met? Where can what you need be met? Like, how do we do that? I think that's a very important skill that people really underutilize. And and I have my theories as to why, but it's one of those things that it's really worth the effort to try to do it. And then if not, then you need to establish whatever ground rules or boundaries for yourself, and you need to honor those, instead of having, we can do this with ourselves. We can be tyrants over ourselves, be like, I expected you to da 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 da, as if you really made some agreement or deal with yourself. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But at the same time, it's like, based on what? Like, your behavior. What's your behavior look like? Where's the evidence that you've been changing your behavior? So why would you have this unreasonable expectation and then beat yourself up?
Yeah.
Don't be a tyrant to yourself either.
That's I think that's a good point. Being a tyrant to yourself, then it's also the inner side of us and not just the outside. And I think that timing, that timing thing as well is important. I think that comes down to also an experience. I think it comes down to experience, because you'll never really know the right moment. But if you have more experience and practice, then you'll be able to navigate that boundaries and the expectations.
Right. Practice. You mean it's going to be hard and it's going to suck, and then eventually it gets better-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it doesn't get easier. Sometimes you just get better at navigating your own emotions as well, and increases your self-awareness about it.
100%. So I think that's it.
That's it. I think that's it for us.
All right, cool. So again, guys, be mindful that when you're running around with expectations without agreements, you're really running around with a bunch of demands. That's being a tyrant, versus leadership. Leadership We're going to have this communication. We're going to be in agreement or in alignment about whatever it is. These are the expectations we agreed upon. Great. Now we have a set of expectations. Accountability is a factor. We move forward based on that. So that requires a lot of skill. That requires a lot of practice. But really, I think the biggest thing there is the willingness to show up. If you got skin in the game or you feel like something good is worth it, something can come from it, then I think that's when you'll do it. I think if you don't believe it, then you won't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. It requires some courage because it's something uncomfortable, unfamiliar that you're going to do. So stick with it and be brave.
100%. All right, Vaughn, where can they find us?
Don't forget to follow us on our social media, Shift on Your Life, and don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube, Shift Training.
All right, guys. Thank you. Happy New Year. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.